Hello everyone, Mr. Dickin here, gearing up to teach you a lesson on density, mass, weight, and volume. I thought it'd be a good idea to start with the definitions of each of these terms, although I put them in a random order so that we could work through this together. Let's start with the first definition. The amount of matter that an object or substance has is the mass. On to the second one. The heaviness of a substance or object is the weight. To the third one, the amount of mass per unit of volume an object or substance has is the density of that subject. And finally, the amount of space measured in cubic units that an object or substance occupies is the volume. Moving right along. Now here's a chart of all four of these: volume, weight, mass, and density, all of these terms. On the far left, we have the terms. In the middle, we have the SI units for each of these terms, which is the international scientific units for these terms. And here on the far left, we have the instruments used to measure these terms. For volume, the SI unit is the centimeters cubed, which is abbreviated as centimeters raised to the third. And you can measure liquids, the volumes of liquids, using a graduated cylinder, and the volume of solids using a ruler. The weight of an object is, the SI unit for that is newtons, with a capital N as its abbreviation, and it is generally measured on a scale. And here is depicted generally just a regular bathroom scale. The mass of an object has SI units of grams, which is abbreviated as a lowercase g, and is generally measured using the instrument called a balance. In class, you've probably seen a triple beam balance, and that is generally what we use in laboratories to measure the mass of an object. Now, density is calculated via an equation, and its SI units are grams per centimeters cubed. And the equation used to calculate density is density, or D, density, or D equals mass divided by volume. Now, so what happens if you have only the density and the mass, or only the density and the volume, to calculate either the mass or the volume? Let's find out. So here we have on the left side a equation of density equals mass divided by volume, although we want to calculate the volume. So let us rearrange these variables in order to get this V here on one side of the equation by itself. So let's write this out a little easier for us to finagle with. So the first step is to get rid of this volume over here on the right side of the equation by multiplying by the volume. And what we do to one side of an equation, we must do to the other. So let's multiply by the volume over here. That cancels these two out, and that gives us M equals V times D. Now we want this V here to be by itself. So let's get rid of the density aspect. So let's divide by D on each side, because we have to do that again. And that cancels these two out, and that will give us volume equals mass over density. Now moving right along to the other side. Now let's get this M. We want to calculate the mass, so let's get this M here on one side of the equation by itself. This should prove to be much easier than the first one. So let's write it out again. Density equals mass over volume. Once again, to get rid of this V over here, we have to multiply by V on each side, and that cancels these two out, and that gives us our final mass equals volume times density. Okay, all right, so it's important on this slide to remember these final equations here and here. So let's do some practice problems. Let's calculate the density of an object when we have the mass and the volume. So let's use our equation that was given. So density equals mass over volume. And now all we have to do is plug in the values in our problem to the equation. So we're looking for density, so that'll still be a variable. D equals, our mass is 12 grams, and our volume is 4 centimeters cubed. Now notice I wrote the units of measurement here because it's very important for your final answer to have the correct units. So after we do our calculation, we should get 3 grams per centimeter cubed here. Perfect. Now let's calculate the volume of a substance when we have the mass and the density. Now once again, we have the equation. Density equals mass divided by volume. And now we want to calculate the volume, so let's get this V here on one side of the equation by itself. So we have to multiply by the volume once again on both sides. That will cancel these two out. That'll give us volume times density equals mass. And now we have to get rid of this D, so let's divide by D, divide by density. Cancels these two out, and that will give us volume equals mass divided by density. So now that we have that, we can volume equals mass divided by density, plug in the values that are in the problem. So once again, we are solving for volume, so V will be a variable still, equals our mass in this problem is 18 grams, and our density in this problem is 3 grams per centimeter cubed. So after we do our calculation, we should get 6 centimeters cubed for the volume of this substance. And on for our last problem. Our last problem is going to be calculating the mass of a substance when we have the density and the volume. So once again, let's use our equation. D equals m over v. Now we want to get this mass on one side of the equation by itself because that's what we're calculating. So in order to do that, we have to multiply each side by the volume, which will cancel out these two variables, and that will give us the equation m, or mass, equals volume times density. Or in other words, let's write it over here. This is the same equation, mass equals volume times density. Now that we have our equation, we can just plug and chug. We can just throw the values from our equation, or from our problem, into our equation. We're solving for mass, so mass will be a variable still, equals volume. Our volume is 4 centimeters cubed, and our density is 6 grams per centimeter cubed. So after our calculation, we should get a mass of 24 grams. Alrighty, well, thank you all for paying attention. I hope you got some good notes out of this. If you're feeling a little confused, you can always watch the video over again and take notes. I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care now.